Hello folks, I'm Alex, this is Alex Unabridged, and these are my thoughts on The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K LeGuin. So welcome back to the channel if that is the case. Yes, another little review for you today for my science fiction for the somewhat hesitant series. And yes, today it's time for The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K LeGuin. So what is this about then? This is set on the icy planet of Gethin, also known as Winter, where we meet Genli I, who is tasked with establishing diplomatic ties with the planet on behalf of a consortium of worlds called the Ecumen. Here on Winter, he confronts a culture radically different from his own, one where the population is somewhat androgynous for most of the time, apart from during their kind of their biological cycle, when they become sexually active and capable of reproduction. Gender roles, as Genli knows them, are completely different in this society. Fluid, they're not based on fixed identities. Emotional expression and social structures are therefore dramatically different because of this. And Genli's initial struggles to navigate this world and understand its customs lead to profound personal insights and challenges to his own assumptions about nature, gender, and morality. We kind of follow his journey, his kind of psychological, philosophical journey, as well as a physical journey that he makes whilst he's on this planet. So that's the basic rundown for you. So what did I think of it? This is very much a book of two halves for me. The first half of it, I came close to DNFing on a number of occasions. Then we hit the halfway point and the narrative sort of shifted quite a bit, and I was in, and I absolutely ripped through the second half of it, the back half of it, and ended up loving it. I think part of my issue with it is the writing style, or a big part of my issue with it to start with was the writing style. It can be quite dry. A lot of it is told from Genli's perspective. We do get interludes from other characters like Estevan, and we get some kind of sort of folk tales, legends, that kind of thing coming in, and those in particular, the legends, folk tales side of things. That's where Le Guin really kicks in with some absolutely phenomenal prose. But a lot of the general exposition and sort of Genli's kind of stuff I found very dry, and it's got a lot of language in it because it's set on a different planet with a different culture, and therefore there's a different language, different words for things, and it's such a different culture that there's, you're going to have to make new words for things. I struggle with that. I always struggle with that. So that was a little bit difficult for me, but mainly it was just the dryness in general of the prose that really put me off. It wasn't a writing style that I particularly enjoyed. I found it very difficult to engage with. I couldn't connect with the characters particularly. But then, as I say, we hit a point halfway through where the plot kind of shifts, and the language, although it doesn't change dramatically, I don't think it stopped being an issue. That dryness, or that tendency to dryness, kind of stopped being an issue for me. It's kind of, that's the point at which we really start to see the development, the evolution of Genli's kind of understanding of the Gathenian culture, the Gathenian kind of way of life, and how they see things on the planet. And that made a big difference because you're getting a lot more kind of from inside Genli's head rather than his kind of diplomatic sort of relations, that kind of thing, the political side of things. Character-wise, I mean, it's all the characters are decent. They're all, you know, well enough established and developed, but I think Genly and Estravan are, by the end of it, really good, because it is largely, they are, you know, it's their relationship that really kind of has a proper arc throughout. We meet Estravan right at the beginning, and then, you know, at various points throughout, and it's kind of a big feature, you know, throughout the latter half of the book. You know, a lot of the second half is just Genly and Estravan. And yeah, you do definitely get much more about them and about their histories and about their outlooks and things like that. I enjoyed some of the world building. I think it was certainly believable. It was well thought out. I'll definitely give it that. The atmosphere was good. The iciness, the coldness, the way that Genly particularly is reacting to this environment, these kind of conditions on the planet that he's not used to at all. That's seeing it through his eyes, especially in the latter half, was really effective. At how different and how harsh, how hostile a kind of an environment it is. As I say, plot wise, it's quite an interesting one, because the first half is much more about kind of the way that the society works, especially politically. We first meet Genly and Estravan in Karhide, which is a city in a country on the planet, which is a monarchy essentially. It's a kind of an absolute monarchy, and so we get that side of how that system works, and then we move to another country, and Genly meets characters that are much more like his, you know, people he knows or from his own culture. The society is a lot more familiar to him. And to start with, he's very happy about this. But then, you know, because of the similarities, there are also a lot of like nasty elements to that as well, which Genly finds out the hard way, basically. So, you know, it's an interesting setup in terms of the way that the world is built, definitely. And I found that really, really interesting. The second half is much more of a survival story. It's much more of a kind of an adventure survival kind of story, with you know, just Estravan and Genly together, trying to make a very hazardous journey across the ice. That I loved, but then I love that kind of stuff. I love kind of, you know, adventure expedition type things, survival stories, and that, you know, that really tapped into, you know, something that I can really kind of enjoy and I can connect with and stuff like that. And I think when you put people under pressure like that, when you put characters in that kind of situation, you learn so much more about them so quickly. So I think that's where it works really well for me. I think the biggest thing about this, you know, even with all the stuff that I didn't necessarily like, I'm not a fan of the writing style in general. There are some sections of absolutely phenomenal prose in there, and that's what stopped me from DNFing it. And some of the, you know, some of the kind of the characters that I was interested in learning more about. But the thing that really kind of this book is about is it's the ideas. It's an ideas book. It's a, you know, a look at what our world might be if we weren't quite so tied to this idea of distinction between genders and gender roles. That's where I think it really just shines, which is where I expected it to, based on what I, you know, I'd read about it. It's an interesting one because Le Guin, through Genly I, and some of the other characters, predominantly uses the male pronoun for the characters, for these like gender fluid or, you know, gender non-specific characters. And I think I've read somewhere more recently that she's said, you know, if she was to write this now, she would use the non-gender specific pronoun of they. And I think that would work really well, actually. It's quite discombobulating reading he, his, him, you know, and characters being referred to as a man. So yeah, it would be interesting to see how that would play in a modern kind of reworking. But yeah, the ideas in it are brilliant in terms of the way that they're explored, not just in terms of the difference in society, the differences in a society where gender is not the be all and end all, and gender differences are not a big part of how a society works, but just in terms of Genley's kind of fear of difference, his lack of understanding, his difficulties with getting his head round the culture and the people, and his kind of he starts from very much from a point of like mistrust. There's a passage I will read from the beginning of the book. Estraven had conversed amiably at table. Now, sitting across the hearth from me, he was quiet. Though I had been nearly 2 years on winter, I was still far from being able to see the people of the planet through their own eyes. I tried to, but my efforts took the form of self-consciously seeing a Gathenian first as a man, then as a woman, forcing him into those categories so irrelevant to his nature and so essential to my own. Thus, as I sipped my smoking sour beer, I thought that at table Estraven's performance had been womanly, all charm and tact and lack of substance, specious and adroit. Was it in fact perhaps this soft, supple femininity that I disliked and distrusted in him? For it was impossible to think of him as a woman, that dark, ironic, powerful presence near me in the firelit darkness, and yet whenever I thought of him as a man, I felt a sense of falseness, of imposture, in him or in my own attitude toward him. His voice was soft and rather resonant, but not deep, scarcely a man's voice, but scarcely a woman's voice either. So it's like, yeah, Genley's, he cannot seem to get his head round the difference between the Gathenians and his own kind of human race. And I think the journey of kind of discovery, of understanding that Le Guin takes Genley on throughout this book is brilliantly done. It's really moving, it's touching. And I mean, again, towards the end of the book, Genley kind of comes to an understanding about his own feelings, his own understanding, his own fears, his own mistrust of Estraven. So yeah, that exploration of sort of fear or discomfort at such a difference to someone, who is so different to yourself, I think that's a really interesting idea and a really interesting exploration of that idea. So yeah, I enjoyed this by the end of it, but not necessarily from the beginning. As I say, the beginning was quite a slog, but then I hit a point and I was all in. So I will pop my ratings up on screen for you. The individual ratings then. Characters I've given a 7 to. I think they are solid throughout. All of the characters that you meet, you do meet quite a cast of characters. But the two main ones of Genley I and Estraven are really good. Atmosphere and world building I've given an 8 to. Even though I struggled with some of the language, I think by the end of it I kind of got into that a bit more. And I think the actual atmosphere of the planet, this icy planet, and the sort of political structures, how it feels to live there, were really, really well done, and I could visualize it really strongly. Writing I've given a 7 to. It is extremely well written. A lot of it is just not the sort of style that I particularly like personally, but there are moments of such beautiful prose from Le Guin, and the way that she frames things, the way that she says things, describes things, muses over things, her choice of words and her thought, the thought that's gone into it is brilliant. And so it's a mixed bag for me on the writing, but there's enough brilliant stuff in there to make me want to potentially read more Le Guin. Plot I've given a 7 to. It's good. I enjoyed it. As I say, first half not so much necessarily, but the second half absolutely loved it. Ideas for this is a 9. Yeah, considering when this was written, in like what, 1969, 1970, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. We've obviously moved on quite a bit since then, and we have a society now where we, generally, a lot of people recognize that there is more than just the two genders. That non-binary gender is a thing, and yeah, it's still so relatable, especially in terms of what I was saying about Genley's lack of understanding, fear, whatever you want to call it, and how kind of difficult he finds to understand this society that is so different from his own. I think there's a lot of stuff in there that's really, really well done and relatable. Enjoyment, I've given it a 7, because it was very much a book of two halves. First half, didn't enjoy anywhere near as much as the second half, but in the end, my enjoyment, was up there. It was good. It was very, very good. So if I add up those scores and divide by 6, we get a 7.5 out of 10. So I will put that on Story Graph, and I think a 3.5 stars. Part of me is thinking possibly it'll go up to a 4. I'm not entirely sure yet. As I say, it's the fact that it's of two halves. The second half definitely deserves 4 stars. The first half, for me, especially just in terms of enjoyment and stuff, less so. But I'll mull on that. But yeah, 3.5 to 4 stars on the Story Graph. So those are my thoughts on The Left Hand of Darkness then. I will try some more Le Guin. It will be something that I'll have to work up to, I think. I think I might leave some of her other works in the Hainish cycle until I'm a little bit further on with my science fiction journey. I think the more I read of stuff that's kind of, certainly in terms of the setting and the language and that kind of difference that comes in, that I find particularly difficult to kind of get into. I think I'll get better at that as I read more stuff like that. So I think I will definitely return to Le Guin, because ideas alone, I want to read more of that kind of stuff, the way that she thinks, the way that she, and the way she expresses those kind of thoughts, those ideas. I think I definitely want to, get into that more. But yeah, there will come a point where I'll be like, yep, I'm ready for some more Le Guin. So yeah, we'll see, but I will definitely return to her stuff. So if you've got any recommendations of where to go next with Le Guin, Le Guin science fiction, that is, then do let me know in the comments below. So that will do from me today. Thank you very much for watching, folks. As always, do drop your thoughts in the comments below. It's always lovely to hear from you. Do let me know, what you think of The Left Hand of Darkness. Is it one of your favourites? I know it's a favourite for a lot of people. Or did you have the same sort of block with some of the language and writing and things like that I did in the first half? I will be back on Tuesday with a little tag video for you. So I do hope you'll join me for that then. But from me, for now, that's ta-ra.